This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hitting the Road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. This is Nanette Bartow, and I am back with you today with some laundry and research from past presentation. And of course, we're going to go through some of the solves with Harriette Sucher. And joining us today will be also Nolan Del Campo. Just some catch up from my research, really. If we can throw that presentation up, we're going to backtrack again because, of course, I'm still reading through the Texarkana Phantom FOIA files, and I did find that there were some fingerprints that were unexplainable that were found in that particular crime, in the Booker crime. Also, that she had been raped, which was kind of news to me. A lot of these cases that I looked at, either there was a sexual assault with some type of an item, but this one actually indicates that she was raped. So there may be other crimes that I have 86'd or not looked at, since I did not believe that it was within the realm, or this could simply have been the beginning where he thought this was something he could get away with, and then later found out that he could not, and then started using objects instead of actually raping the victims himself. I did also pull out information in regards to a question footprint impression that was at the scene, and they indicated it was a size of approximately 9.5 to 10.5. Now, of course, that seems like a very wide range, and I'm sure there's a reason why they couldn't actually narrow that down, but it is still within the range of the Zodiac killer. A little bit of trivia during my research, as well as I found out that JFK's father was a very good friend of Hearst, and JFK's father, as I've been told, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, was also a bootlegger of rum. So, of course, that is all backed by that whole mob and syndicate type stuff that I've indicated has been revolving around these people in these cases this entire time. JFK's father also asked Hearst to give JFK a job, and thus he did work for the paper for some time in a journalist or investigative type manner, mostly I believe over in the Europe area, but still the bottom line is we have another connection here to Hearst. Let me go ahead and bring in, let's see. Oh, I am not sure why that one came up. Oh, okay. So I've been doing continued research in regards to the actual caliber of the casings that are found and the guns that were used. So and this was obviously brought up by one of my commenters on YouTube, CD, in regards to whether or not a 32 Colt could shoot a 22 bullet. And obviously, we see the Western Super X caliber 22 long rifle cartridge cases. I thought that meant that it had to be shot from a rifle, and it does not. It can actually be shot from a pistol. The interesting part of this is that, of course, they talked about a 22 Colt Woodsman pistol, or that the casings were similarly fired from this type of a weapon. And then down in, I guess, at some point in time, we also see that there was the foreign make on Dania Beach. So what I did find out about this is that while they indicated it was a Colt automatic pistol or revolver, it appears that they all had extractor marks in the bottom of the casings, which means that something extracted that from the gun. It was not a revolver. So we are looking at an automatic, semi-automatic, something to that degree. And what I did find is that they could actually put a particular type of casing around the bullet that would allow it to be shot from a 32. Now, if this was knowledge for anybody who was in the gun know, then Jack would have known this and possibly have even made his own bullets at that point in time. Either way, it is entirely possible to shoot a 22 caliber bullet from a 32 Colt, and that is just based on what casing the bullet is actually put in. And so here is some of the research that I looked up. We can see what the 22 long rifle bullet looks like over here in the bottom right-hand corner. Let's see here. I did kind of look at the diameters to see if it is possible. I mean, the 22 is a smaller diameter than the 32. Obviously, though, your bullet would kind of shimmy back and forth, and that's why they talk about these other cases. So you're not actually altering the gun in order to do it. You're actually just placing the bullet itself into a different casing with a larger diameter, and then that would make it capable of being fired from the 32. So CD, yes, you were right. That does appear to be something that is possible. I'm going to continue that with some gun training that I'm going to be having, and I'll be asking some of these similar questions in regards to the bullets and which ones can be shot from which guns. Let's see. There is also, I need to do some research, and we will backtrack once I do that. That Dewhurst speaks about the 22 rifle that Jack had being a prototype that was stolen from the company, and that his firing pin was slightly different. And in Stephen Dewhurst's book, he indicated that he believed that the firing pin had either been shaved down or something to that effect in order for it to be the size that it was, or that the company was trying different sizes, and that's why the prototype that Jack ended up with had a slightly different imprint in regards to the casing itself. Now I'm trying to put that together and find out if that has something to do with possibly firing it from a different type of gun than it was initially made for. And this would be a great way to confuse the police, obviously. If you're shooting a 22 out of a 32, the rifling characteristics are that of a 32, but then the 22 bullet is being shot from the same gun in another crime spree, and that, or not another crime spree, I'm sorry, really within the same crime spree, but at another crime scene within that crime spree. So we'll get back to that. Either way, I did look up, like I said, the difference in the measurements of these guns. I also looked at this one was a conversion formula in regards to how to calculate the 22 and the 32 and what that actual size might be. I did notice that it stated the adapters permit the use of a 22 rimfire ammunition in 22 caliber center fire rifles, as well as a 32 ACP, which is an automatic Colt pistol, and a 30 carbine ammunition in high velocity 30 caliber center fire rifles. And of course, as I'm going through Jack's stuff and I'm studying, researching these guns, I actually find that he has complete notes on the 30 cal carbine, Winchester brand only, and he talks about the grain, he talks about the muzzle, the yards that it will go, mid-range trajectory. He's got all of this mapped out and calculated out. So it would be my assertion that yes, if there was anybody who could pull off this mysterious which bullet am I, or which gun am I, should I say, it would have been Jack that could have done that. So I want to go ahead and bring on now Harriette Sucher and welcome her to the show. Hi. Good there.
Morning again.
And I also like to welcome Nolan Del Campo, attorney at law for Sacramento area. Hi there, Nolan.
Good morning. Yes, good morning again. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually,
okay, good, because I can't hear me. I mean, I can, but maybe it's because I'm clogged in my ear. But
yeah, wow, no, you're extremely loud, so we're going to have to tone her down a little bit. That way you can hear the rest of us. I'm kidding.
Okay.
So basically what I wanted to do today, Harriette and Nolan, is I want to go over the actual solve, because while I think you know what it means, and I think Nolan knows what some of this stuff means, I think the rest of the public is like me and is rather clueless in regards to some of these things. So I've made a list of those things that are in the solve that I would like to discuss as we go down it. And So the references in the messages, what do they mean? The Dear Draft Board letters from March 1968 addressed to RFK celebrating his presidency. That hasn't happened yet. And the Patricia Houts letter indicates that RFK and MLK have been assassinated and references the Syracuse, New York Draft Board, which is the basis for the communication celebrating that RFK is supposed to become our new president. However, the Patricia Houts letter purports to be written 11/1/1967, which would indicate it was written before the Dear Draft Board letters. But I am researching the postmarks as we talked about before, and I do have some interesting stuff to talk about those in the presentation if we have time to get to them. I've said that the mob always knows a guy, and that guy handles certain things, and that could have been Jack, having been the messenger in many of these cases and a murderer in some of them. So there's a whole lot that's going on in the world of Zodiac Jack, but we're going to start with some of these communications. And the first one happens to be the New York 1850 d'Aguiar rum. What is the background on that, Harriette?
All I know is when I started seeing the d'Aguiar and, 1850 coming up, and then, rum, I looked it up, and it's exactly, if you look at, there's a label, they have pictures of it that is still presented that way. The label has N.Y 1850 d'Aguiar rum. And I'm guessing this is just something that, they helped bootleg it, and you know what I mean, and during Prohibition, but it's a rum because I looked up the company. It's their specific recipe is aged 12 years before it's sold. So
and now and more along the lines of the family who owned it. What is their background?
The family who owned it, that I don't know. All I know is just the style, and I'm guessing that's the name, probably Caribbean. So I just looked up as much as I could to make sure that there was such a real rum company, and I was shocked. It's very popular today. It's a famous since 1850. That's when they established their specific recipe and started selling.
So were you or were you not able to associate the rum makers with JFK's father? Or was that just because he ran rum that you thought that there was a connection?
I think it's because it's, in New York, and I know that watching many of the old speeches of when Senator Bobby Kennedy was at the end of his get-together, he would have a toast with rum.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
All right.
In fact, the night that he was assassinated, he had just done a toast with rum, and then they left. And I think this is where Nolan Del Campbell could come in, because he, that's when he had his toast. Yay, we won the primary, and so
it's on to Chicago and let's win there.
Okay.
What's that?
It's on to Chicago and let's win there. It's his last public words.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. No, so I did read a little bit about it. And of course, I always want to say you can't trust the news or the internet, but I did see that JFK's father did run rum during the Prohibition. Is that something that you were also aware of, Nolan?
I knew he was an alcohol runner. I didn't know it was specifically rum, and I bet it was more than just rum. But
right.
Yes.
All right. That brings us on to the next question, which is John E. Walsh II. And what I really want to say about this before we start this is that it's interesting that his name is coming up in these communications at all.
So early.
Definitely early. Simply because we know that as the Scorpion, the Zodiac wrote John Walsh in 1990. So and I think that was because he began airing episodes about the Zodiac. He began talking about the infamous killer. And of course, I thought that he was making contact with him because, like Tom Voigt, he wanted his story told. So he was trying to get to somebody who would tell his story. But now that you're coming up with his name so early on, what is his part in this particular communication?
That his father, from what I'm understanding, but it's really hard to find out any more puzzle pieces. His father knew McCabe, the Navy guy that was that there's this Irish mob type connection, but the guys who were against the Kennedys, you got the Irish mob that's for the Kennedys and the Irish mobsters that are against them. And
so
it
the
looks
Walsh
like
would
he's
be on the side of against
them.
he's helping drive around evidence that is covering things up. Okay.
Yeah.
So and then we see the Zodiac contact him, much like he contacts Belli and Tom Voight and many others that we're going to actually see. All right,
There's
answering
more.
that question. What's that?
There's more in the 1986 Sacramento letter.
But we're not there yet.
I mean, he's taunting Walsh in that too. So
gotcha.
Anyways,
we'll get to that one. Then Rose McCabe. I just heard you mention McCabe. Who is McCabe?
Okay, McCabe is the Navy guy, the very trusted. It's kind of disgusting to know this, but many people brought up about McCabe in a lot of the presentations I attended in the Dallas conferences. He was very trusted, and he was in JFK's inner circle, but he was a traitor. He betrayed Kennedy, so he was in
so
on.
Who is Rose?
Getting him. That's the coroner. The coroner in Dallas. His last name is Rose. So he's in it. He's in the connection of the inner circle going to bring down Kennedy and the conspiracy. It is a conspiracy.
So Rose is the last name of someone?
Yeah, he's the coroner.
Who's McCabe then? McCabe is
this
is two different people.
Guy. Yeah, there's two people.
Okay, I will separate that out.
The way the solve is coming out, they are very, very connected. They're two of the biggest traitors. Wow. That's what Jack is saying.
Well, then I put the names together correctly, but I called them Rose McCabe, and I thought they were a person.
They're two people. And for all we know, they were cross-dressers. I don't care right now.
Well, so then when we seen the postcard in 1963 in regards to JFK come out, it was purchased in Palmdale and mailed in Lancaster. And of course, it did not give a return address, but you presume that meant that it was classified. The classified Palmdale address that you're talking about in the communication from, this one would be the Dear Draft Board letters, is literally the way the postcard came across in the 1963 postcard sent to Dallas PD. So what makes you think, I mean, just because it's missing there, it's classified, or did you come up with the words?
I tried to look for it recently and it's still classified. I don't want to get in trouble with the military. So
it turns out we got to be careful about that.
The particular building, the correct address, it says this is a classified area, So Jack is saying this went to a very specific classified location that's still classified today. So that's all you have is those lines.
Right. And now on to the medical photographer, Marjorie Alette. Now, where does she, where's her background? Who is she affiliated with?
She gained some fame later on in the 60s as being the photographer of an early Janis Joplin, but that's her job. She's a medical photographer, and her job is taking pictures of autopsies and also specific types of surgeries that is needed, dental, back, where the victims are victims. Okay, they are victims eventually, but they're positioned a certain way. Some of them are with their arms crossed because they're going to have surgery in the abdominal area, or even the autopsy victims have to be placed a certain way. So when they're taking pictures for evidence, that's what her job was. But
so why the name change? Why Myrtle Walker?
I don't know. Why did she go from Myrtle Walker to Marjorie Alette? But Myrtle Walker is the mother of one of the Texas I-45 victims that I couldn't find any information on, and this is why. Then I find Jack is saying she's AKA Myrtle Walker. And it's also bringing up about the Palmdale, the autopsy photos, and she's supposed to be a lesbian, but from what I'm seeing, she had offspring from her significant other that was a guy, but she helped conspire to kill that person also. And you'll find out about that in the Texas I-45 killer victims.
Wow.
She's very dirty. So if she's a lesbian, I'm a monkey's uncle. I think she's just somebody pretending to. I think she's just somebody pretending so she can escape murder. She's trying to get away.
I think that in any of these cases with this higher elite group of people, they get to be whoever they want to be without anybody looking down on them, whether it's indoors or outdoors. Like they decide who they want to be, and they get to be it for the time that they are. It's almost as if they're completely pretending their entire life. But personally, myself, if my name was Myrtle, I'd change it to Marjorie too.
Okay. Yeah. And she's got a Lower Lake connection. She has property just about 500 feet from me, by the way the crow flies.
Have you heard of this person?
Connection.
Okay. Have you heard of
name?
Huh?
What's that? You better change your name.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this person, Nolan?
No, I have not. But
has there been anything in what you've read about anybody who did the medical photography in the JFK case?
I wasn't really looking for that type of information, those details. I was trying to go further than that, but it's interesting. And I would prefer Marjorie Alette too. It's a lot more sexy than Myrtle Walker.
It's all about being sexy in this world. All right, I think that I think that answers the questions in that area. And with Joplin, now who is Al Ibarra?
Al Ibarra? Oh my God. He's the CEO and public information officer for the classified United Auto Workers 887 local union there.
Oh, okay. So I was right.
He's part of a classified thing that helped build the module that got us to the moon, and all kinds of other things that I tried to look further. But again, I get this, this is
classified.
They don't exactly too much of a warning, but it starts saying you want to look at a .mil site, and I learned from the past, if you just want to do it like this, you don't want to get into the military stuff and have them, wondering, what are you doing? What are you poking around here for? I'm just an anagrammer. That's all. I'm trying to solve the code.
Well, when you talk military in Palmdale, you're also talking NASA. And people don't realize NASA is a part of the Department of Defense.
Right.
And so they're under the guise of the Secretary of Defense and CIA and other, and the executive branch.
Well, and that brings me back to Jack being a member of ARSMATS. ARSMATS eventually also began to include NASA missions, search and recovery in case any of those rockets went down or what. I don't know what the proper lingo is for those things, but I know that when I read up on ARSMATS, as you go through it, it basically enveloped at one point in time also NASA and NASA missions.
Yeah, NASA's had more failures than successes over the years.
That's why they need ARSMATS.
They didn't even leave the ground, and 3 astronauts burned up. Gus Grissom and White, and I forget the third guy's name. That they all died in one of the early Apollo missions.
It's interesting. We don't even get to hear about the failures. We get to hear about the successes, but how about the people who've lost their lives in the process of achieving those missions? I did not know that. I mean, obviously, I guess most of America doesn't.
Yes, several. And all the money expended too.
Right. Now, what is 704 Grumman? Did I have this right?
I think it's a labor union that's, I believe, based. Oh my God, I hope I got this right myself. But I believe it's based out of Long Island, which has a long history of mobster connections. A lot of mobster people there, and Grumman apparently. This is before it became part of Northrop. Was apparently very ticked off, from what I understand. JFK. Basically, in a nice way, told the company to go bleep themselves, that their equipment that they were trying to design for the future use, especially connections with NASA, were outdated and cut a whole bunch of because I had to really get into this. He dropped a whole bunch of contracts in 1962. And so I think this made them quite angry. And then I find out in 1962 that JFK's administration was changing the acronyms for all the military equipment. And can you imagine you have a million acronyms for all these military designed equipment from the 1940s, 50s, and he's decided this needs to be updated and he's going to change all the acronyms. Can you imagine being an admiral saying, I need to order some more of the S-15s, and they'll say, well, that's not meant for, patrolling over in Europe. That's now changed to patrolling over in south part of Japan. I mean, can you imagine these people, like suddenly everything is Greek to them? So I think this is one of the reasons that made them angry.
Another issue with JFK a year later in 63, he was also exploring, combining, or at least working with the Soviet Union in regard to the space exploration. Yeah, instead of making a space race, he was going to, he wanted to eventually share technology, share research, and work with the Soviet Union. And people at NASA and people at CIA did not like that.
I bet. Well, then he's on everybody's list. He's on the steel people's list, the lumber people's list. It seems to me like he was making everybody mad. And is that why America loved him so much? I mean, the public seemed to
he was taking charge,
right?
And the military was not liking this. Sorry,
so then I was thinking, or I was under the impression that I had heard Northrop Grumman at some point in time. Was that not?
They are.
Is that not hold on?
Sorry.
Is that not defense contracting? Who is Northrop Grumman?
They combined their companies, I think a decade or so later. So then Northrop Grumman gets back into being part of the system to help design, future things. And so they are, and they're classified also. You start looking in that, and then all of a sudden you get to Palmdale, and it's a classified area. And so they are basically doing a lot of things.
But are they? Is it defense contracting or just NASA type? Okay.
It's both.
I felt like I had heard it before, but I wasn't really sure. And when that came up in the solve, I was like, is this two different people or the same thing I'm thinking of? And is it, defense, like Lockheed, basically?
It's just
similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they became happy campers later on.
Aerojet as well.
Aerojet. Yep. Okay. So I thought that I had heard that somewhere around, and I know I wanted to double check. Now, who is Harry Lang?
Harry Lang was born in Germany during the fall of Germany, 1940s. He comes here to the United States, and he's a very brilliant guy. He, in the 1950s, gets into, after he, of course, changed his name, anglicized it, because I forget, it's a German name. That with Lang is a German name, but his first name is very German. But anyways, He changes it to Harry Lang. But he ends up working for, I believe it's the military, but then to the NASA field, because he's helping to design the future graphics for each mission. And, for what it's supposed to look like, if they're going to land somewhere or fly somewhere, he's a part of helping design all of that, what the look should be. I think even the look of the modules, I'm trying to remember all of this, but so he
was basically just part of,
what was that?
So he's basically just part of the NASA, the NASA crew.
Yeah, he's a part of I would say I've learned a little bit more about NASA. He's a part of the many buddy systems for each mission up until 1965, where he gets called over to the guy who's about to film 2001 A Space Odyssey. Says, we like you here in Hollywood. We want you to help design our graphics and all kinds of things. Yeah.
That's
So
Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick. Yeah,
What's that? Stanley Kubrick?
he directed.
Yeah, Stanley
2001.
Kubrick.
Yeah. I'm
Gotcha.
curious. Do you know if Harry Lang was a Scottish Rite Freemason?
Oh, see, yeah, okay. So was
He's
Gear.
asking.
Was he?
No,
Yeah.
he's asking if he was.
Do you
Oh,
know? Okay.
I think he was.
If you look back, a lot of the astronauts and a lot of people, the higher ups in NASA, were Scottish Rite Freemasons.
Let me see.
And that comes up too. I mean, obviously with the
I might as well take this thing off. It's not working. But you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
We can hear you. Can you hear
I'll
us?
just take it off.
Okay.
I was noticing I'm having a problem with it. Okay.
Okay. So then you talk about Lewis Research Center PB Buddy. What is that?
PB Buddy. Okay. That would be Gear, Robert Gear. He had a very active and very amazing
What's
life.
PB?
PB Buddy. PB is, I believe, is patrol bomber. They used those high altitude patrol bomber people to eventually, some of the ones that ended up into the stratosphere. The training. So he knew how to fly high and be a patrol bomber. But the Buddy he ended up being a part of looks like the Apollo 8 buddy system. So if you watch the movie Apollo 13, you'll understand it a little bit more.
Okay.
You got but you have the main core people that are in the mission, but then you have all these other people underneath. So some people get sick, some people die, that person gets stressed up. So it looks like he was one of the lower level buddy system people that was a part of Apollo 8.
He's an alternate.
He knew about flying. So
he's an alternate, basically.
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And
then
Apollo 13 was also a failed mission. If you remember,
yeah, see,
yeah,
like the one that's I hate to say it doesn't look good for what's happening today, but we'll get to that later.
Now, Pampa, Texas, crop dusting pilot. Is this
Gear.
Abel? Oh, that's Gear.
That's Gear. But Gear is Abel's friend. That's what I'm learning. So Robert Gear, he knew how he went from crop dusting pilot into the Navy, into patrol bomber, I believe, because he did do some couple of years for early Vietnam.
So Gear worked for Lewis Research then.
Yeah, he was, and I think Lang was also connected with Lewis Research Center.
All right, now how does British Columbia, Canada fit into this?
Well, that's interesting. You bring up about the Scottish Rite angle. For some reason, Robert Gear is very connected somehow to British Columbia, Canada, and that's in his bio. And he did some activities up there, but he's very much a Freemason and belonged to a lot of lodges. And I think he's connected to the Scottish Rite. So it's coming up in his bio. And
gotcha.
That's very strange because we got the British Columbia connection to the D.B. Cooper. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of information about him showing up in his brief early days up until 1970s.
I know that sometimes we talk about these things and people think that we're way off in left field when we're mentioning things like D.B. Cooper. There is definitely a Canada connection with D.B. Cooper, though the public has not heard yet how that connection has been made to the Zodiac. But I do want you guys to understand that a lot of the connections I've made have been made on the linguistics of some communications, as in the Oakland County child murders. I have just recently been presented. Well, I'm not going to say recently. It's been a couple months ago. Terry Batcher, who's been on the show, had provided me with a handwritten letter or document from the Jill Robinson file of the OCCK. And up until this point that he gave this to me, I had only seen a typewritten letter, and the linguistics were a match. And I have discussed with family members of the victims in regards to that linguistic match. Well, a couple months ago, he gave me this handwritten letter, which I finally actually examined and completed the handwriting on this last weekend, and found out that it was a positive match for Jack Terrence in the sense that he used his natural handwriting to actually execute this letter. So I did that examination and I sent it over to Kathy Broad, which is Tim King's sister. So sometimes some of these connections have been made without even handwriting in it, but not to my surprise, once the handwriting is actually surfaced, which she had to sue to get this FOIA files released to her, once you see the handwriting, you find out that everything that I had been saying in regards to the linguistics were true. So we will get to DB Cooper and everybody. I promise you will understand that connection when we get there. All right. We know that Dickinson is attributed to the communications, the I-45 deaths, the League City Field of Stars death. And now we've seen it in Tim Miller's letter. We've seen it in your solve. Dickinson keeps coming back around. And that to me is always a good sign that you're on track with the message that you're trying to deliver. Now you've answered who detective. So you said Detective Robert Gere, or did I have that wrong?
He's a detective. He's with the Texas Rangers. He's also at times working for the sheriff's department in a couple of counties, but mainly Brazoria County. So,
and that's what came up, right? Was Brazoria?
Yeah. And just this one solve for, I was like, oh my God, that's his bio that I read. It's almost as if they were planning to kill him. I don't know what else to say.
Did he die? Was he killed?
He died a few years ago, but his biography in his obituary is everything. All these, he was a crop duster, he was a detective, Brazoria County, all kinds of things. So I found it really strange that the day before I came up with that, and then anyways, but I'm seeing you're asking about Brazoria County. That's a very, very major connection. 77511, I believe that's the Alvin, Texas area, and that's where I believe a certain type of fuel was made by Phillips Oil and Gas Company, and and that's where some of the future Texas I-45 victims of Gere, that's Gere's daughter, and her friend Bracewell, who was the granddaughter of Ronald Bracewell, very NASA connected. Bracewell Observatory. We didn't get to the moon without him. But anyways.
It's so interesting that many of these victims are coming from very prominent families and unsolved. I'm still astonished every time I find out another one is connected to somebody highly involved in
very
secret
prominent
stuff. Right, very
They're
prominent.
not supposed to be. They're supposed to be just innocent victims. I mean, they are innocent. The kids are innocent victims, but who they're connected to are not often, I'm finding, not very good people. It's sad that they're the children of somebody who's or the offspring of somebody.
Oh, but Nolan, you started to say something about Phillips.
Oh, well, Phillips Petroleum is the name of the corporation. But anyway,
Phillips 66.
My theory on these innocent victims that have these parents and relatives that are highly connected, it encourages them or motivates them to keep secrets, I think.
Yeah.
They know that family members are going to die.
Wow. And that's kind of the thing with the mob, I mean, honestly speaking, if you mess with the mob, they're not messing with just you. They're taking out your whole family, right? Like they make sure everybody goes. They don't want anybody coming back to retribute you. So they're going to make sure there's nobody there that can come back and take them out for having taken you out. Right? Kind of the consensus. Petroleum. You were saying Phillips Petroleum because yes, we had the Phillips 66 map.
Yeah, exactly. See?
So is Phillips Petroleum somewhere along the 66 route?
No, that was the company Phillips 66.
That was the name of the gas stations.
Yeah. So they made gas and oil and everything for our vehicles, but they also, it looks like they made a specific blend for the Saturn V rockets.
And that's something I didn't know because I keep coming across these oil connections with Jack and I wasn't sure, but I mean, I didn't know Phillips 66 Because it's called the Phillips 66 map, I did not know or think about Phillips gas station being Phillips 66.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. That's where the map was bought.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Gas stations were where you bought maps back in the day.
Right.
Mhm.
I remember that to a certain degree. I'm a little young, but
Yeah.
all right. So the Bureau of Printing and Engraving in Washington, D.C. These people I found, I did do a little bit of research as I talked to you about, Harriette, and found that they actually handled a lot of the printing and engraving for the Treasury Department, which would have been money plates, would have been notes and different things of monetary value. I thought that this was an extremely interesting theory that I went off on because I started researching the postmarks and the cancellation postmarks, which again is done by the post office, obviously a government agency that would likely have had their printing and engraving done with the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. So that maybe when he's saying in the Dear Draft Board letter, Bureau crazy, that he may be talking about that, the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, and not necessarily the FBI, correct?
I think it could be both. But anyways, the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, you talked about how it also prints up money, right? Oh, well, that's where the Secret Service comes in because they're also connected to the Department of the Treasury. So you have a lot of interconnections here. It looks like Jack and his world were seeing how bad they have been infiltrated by the really bad side of the mob. So,
right. Well, I was thinking more along the lines of the connection with the printing and engraving and the ability for Jack to move his stuff through the postal system as he was capable of doing, number one. And also, the Treasury goon, because you had at one point had done some solves which indicated that Jack was likely a Treasury goon.
He was an IRS goon.
Gotcha. Which would make sense. Which would make sense with the information that I found that his address when he came back from the military was located next to the Lyndon B. Johnson comptroller's office. So I am definitely finding this relation to anything having to do with funds and money and engraving. And of course, the Bureau of Printing and Engraving also handled stamps, correct? For the post office? So everything is kind of running in tandem with your message, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah. But I'm seeing you brought up about the Giori press. Giori press is a certain type of style for pressing the stamp.
Okay.
And because there's another different methods, but sometimes they went out and did some really non-government related connections to get a unique stamp. And then, of course, they were using some, like for this one that had David Thoreau, they had a specific artist that created something, and then they used that artist's renderation of this. So they really did something amazing, with this. And I got a cat that wants out. Come on, kitty.
Let him go. Okay, so NBC and ABC, who owns these entities?
NBC, I believe, was owned by then. National Broadcast Company. I'm actually running a blank now at the time. And ABC.
How about ABC?
ABC is currently owned by Disney, but so.
And we have the Disney
on that one too, but
we definitely have several Disney cross connections that we've already had to date. So there must be some involvement with Disney, and everything that's going on. And then MGM, that's where they did the back lot picture of the first moon pass, correct?
Yeah, that's what it's, and it's because it was pretty much ready to be used because Lang did the decorations for space there, and the setups and what space is supposed to be looking like. So it was ready to go.
Well, I also wanted to pull out that a lot of times when people are trying to solve these ciphers, they always think that they should come up with some message that's consistent with what the Zodiac was actually writing in the forefront of his communications, when that is not necessarily true. We don't always anticipate to find exactly what he's writing on the outside, on the inside of the communication, because then he'd just be repeating himself and there'd be no hidden message. So I did notice, though, that you had in here that Dr. Martin Luther King, go catch Columbia Broadcasting System Quest and NBC, ABC to televise. What made me really perk my ears up looking at that is that, look over here in the Black Dahlia postcard. Slow. Go slow. He was, I kept saying that he constantly refers to hurry up, slow down, go slow, go fast. These are key catchphrases that he's putting. So it was very interesting to see go catch, because of course that is not an actual message that you saw in the communication itself, but it is definitely something that he is consistently saying, go, go, go.
Yeah. His phrasing.
Yes.
So, but you brought up, okay, no, can you go back to that just for a few seconds? So Columbia Broadcasting System, they pretty much had the license of the Moon Quest, and so the other two were, okay, Columbia Broadcasting System was number one, and then NBC and ABC number two. So he's really spelling out right here, because
spelling out what?
He's spelling out that this was the top company, Columbia Broadcasting System. They pretty much had the future rights to do this. And then
who owned
number
them?
two, number three. What was that?
Who owned Columbia Broadcasting? Who?
William Paley was the owner of CBS.
So if you, yeah, well, Nolan will remember when JFK died, that was CBS Broadcasting, oh my God, I can't think of his name right now.
Well, that actually makes something interesting, because CBS 13 News was the only news company to actually take an interest into Dennis Kaufman's story. So while he couldn't get anybody else to pay attention, they've even quoted, we just talked about it last week, a gentleman who is producing a site trying to say that Dennis doesn't really have a case, but he couldn't understand why CBS 13 took an interest in him. Well, here you go. Jack talked about CBS 13. They knew this. These people know who Jack is. I put money on it.
Walter Cronkite, he's the guy. So even with the Moon Quest thing, there's Walter Cronkite. He's the main guy doing the moon missions, and then the other two, ABC, NBC. So they were kind of like in line that way.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, Nolan. You were saying something about CBS.
Oh, I thought it was Murrah, but she's right. At that time, they'd switched to Cronkite as their main guy.
Gotcha. And what is he? There's just the commentator or the
main newscaster for CBS for a number of years.
Well, that puts us on to Patricia Houts. We've only got about 2 minutes left, but we could actually, again, I'm researching the cancellation postmark with the Philatelic Society, the Sacramento Stamp Club, the references in the message, and what do they mean? I wanted to know, is it saying that Richard Nixon will be or has been voted president-elect?
Has been voted president-elect. Yeah.
Which means our date is just a phony date.
Yeah, just to anagram it out. That's all. It's just numbers, and if it fills in amazing.
What would you make of the postmark if you were told the postmark said 1967?
No, the postmark is pretty blurry, and I'd like to, if I brought it up, it's going to be still blurry, because I found when I was working on that through one of our nemesis websites.
I'm just trying to get that question out there first. What would you say if somebody came and said it's postmark 1967? It was not.
That it's blurry. That is blurry.
No, not that it's blurry. What if they could show you a postmark that you could visually see that said 1967? How would you overcome that when you're trying to claim that this letter wasn't written for another year later? Would you say that Jack had access to stamps? He had access because of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing? There's got to be a reason.
Yes.
Why?
Well, that would be George Hodel. That would be George Odell. I'm giving a plus for Steve Odell, who said his dad had all kinds of equipment that were able to be used in his system in the basement at the Snowden house, or the house that's very famous. So they were able to fake the postmarks for cryptic messages.
When
So
I will
that's
let everybody
really
know,
good.
I did find out that these postmarks have been hand rolled. They did not go through the postal system as somebody who dropped it in a mailbox or had it picked up at their home. And we're going to have to talk about that next week because we are at the end of our 50 minutes now. I thank you guys once again for being here.
Thank you.
It looks like we're going to pick back up with the rest of this history next week. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your Labor Day. Bye.
Bye. Can't wait for Monterey Pop.
Thank you. Yeah.